Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Anson and Paul's Big Movie Podcast. I'm Anson Chan.
And I'm Paul Morgan.
And today, we are going to the dentist and getting some cavities filled. But also,
right.
What are we reviewing today, Paul?
We're reviewing Magnolia.
And The Social Network.
Now, full disclosure for our two listeners, because that joke is never going to get old to me. We already tried to do this once, but I had a little bit too I had a little bit too full of a hard drive, so we're trying one more time.
Oh,
now,
okay.
We had already agreed that we were going to start with Magnolia, and that's about as far as we got in the last try. So, starting with Magnolia, Magnolia is a 1999 drama written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, one of the greats. And it stars a variety of really famous people. We got Tom Cruise, Philip Seymour Hoffman, William H. Macy, Alfred Molina, Julianne Moore, John C. Reilly, and a bunch of other people. It's essentially a ensemble drama about finding love and or happiness and or fulfillment in one's life, and it also relies heavily on the concept of coincidence, which it explains in its opening sequence there. So, Anson, as I understand it, you have not seen either of the movies before this week. So, what worked for you? What was notable? What popped out to you about this movie?
Well, I'd add one thing. He said it relies heavily on coincidence, and I'd add explores consequences of actions in the pursuit of love, having love, or dealing with the reality of what love is when it's not what you wanted or
not what you expected. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, definitely.
So what worked for me was so many things. It's hard for me to know where to begin. I loved all the performances. I think this movie was really outstanding in almost all of the characters and the actors that kind of like brought their soul to bear to an extent. You know what I mean? Like the characters are really, they each kind of have a soapbox moment where there's something very revealing and telling about who they are or why they are the way they are and kind of what they're pursuing in life versus, what they pretend to be pursuing or how they pretend to act.
Yeah, they each kind of have a certain charade about the way they go about their life. Each one of them is lying to themselves in a way.
And others, really.
Yes, and to the world around them, especially Tom Cruise.
I think one of the biggest, most interesting things here is, well, I think it's like for all the characters, is the inability for people to be real with themselves. Because they're so caught up in what they try to project to others, they never truly face what they really need to, honestly, in order to kind of make themselves better, not just like in a in a goal-oriented sense, just in like an emotional or mental sense. So a lot of these people suffer from a variety of stigmatisms, that's not the right word.
Stigmas?
A variety of stigmas, and problems kind of thrown onto them by the ones they love or the ones that, they think loved them or
the ones they think don't love them.
Correct. All these things, all these different issues in their daily life. And what we really see is everyone kind of opening up and bearing themselves and discovering, what it means to live with who they really are and the actions that, really defined them. And as we see from like a third person point of view, it may or may not be wholly evident to these characters as they discover these things about themselves, but we're left with a hope or an idea that possibly this is something that is propelling them forward to better themselves, with the exception of maybe the talk show or the game show host. Sounds like he's kind of fucked. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that was a particularly morose storyline.
Yeah, and his ending, his finale, if you will, is a
Was a
little like, yeah, I mean, I don't know how it could get much better for him. I mean,
Yeah, it's
he is
bordering on ignominious. It turns out so badly for him.
defined ignominious.
So it's kind of like disgraceful, I guess,
Yes. Oh,
shameful,
totally.
especially
Yeah.
in the way that he like deals with his daughter and the
Mhm.
way that she snaps back at him, I guess.
Mhm.
So,
How very Weinstein-esque.
oh gosh. Oh,
When I heard you say ignominious or whatever, what was it?
yeah, ignominious. It's a
All I
word that
could.
Shannon P. Casey taught me in sophomore English at Bellarmine Preparatory School.
Funny you should
Shout out
say.
Shannon Casey.
Shout outs to Miss Casey. Thank you for Gothic Lit. I will always have a love for Frankenstein and the other Gothic Lit books we read.
And other gothic stuff that
Yes.
is like that.
Old Poe, my boy Poe. But speaking of Bellarmine, all I could think of was Saint Robert Ignatius, pray for us, when you said. And I was like, yes, I went to Bellarmine too. Praise the saints. Praise them
Yes.
indeed.
Praise them indeed.
So this whole thing about their kind of self-discovery and following these people on their journey, I really, really loved. It borders on preachy on the second viewing,
Sure.
especially so closely after seeing it the first time.
Well, I think it's before Paul Thomas Anderson really developed a sense of style. And so as a result, these characters are given these almost unreal opportunities
Soapbox
to
moments.
express themselves
Yeah.
without interruption or discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think later in his career, he got better about not letting that seem so unreal.
Right. His
In this movie, it feels very much unreal.
I agree. They basically soapbox. They get up on a soapbox and the stage is theirs for 5 minutes for whoever's listening, which is really
the Tom Cruise interview scene is essentially a vehicle for him to talk for 5 minutes and dominate a conversation so that you can hear all of his characters' facades.
Yep, just
all
like
of the things he puts in front of himself to avoid his actual problems.
Just like The Master, when I said like I loved the scene where he was doing the psychological interview with the main character, the dude
With Joaquin
from,
Phoenix.
Yeah, with Joaquin, old Jacquin, as I once said in the Her podcast. But and I said I love that scene, but it's so easy for an actor to excel in something like that because it's delivered on them on a silver platter. And so what you're saying, the interview is
it's
just
so
like
chock full of stuff for them to pick up in terms of subtext.
Oh yeah, it's anything they want it to be.
Yeah.
And this movie is actually quite brilliant in that they all have a really good moment. Two of them, maybe three of them, stand out in particular. Tom Cruise, that was a great, really cool getting to know you scene. But then again, like I said, the cards are stacked in that scene's favor.
Yeah, he's kind of an enigma at that point.
Right.
So you kind of need him to reveal something.
Oh, yeah. Who's the dude that played the old guy? Earl Partridge, Jason Robards?
Sure.
I think that's it. Jason Robards. Yeah, that was him. No, wait, no. Yes, no. Because his name was Earl Partridge, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Wow, he looks so different in his picture for IMDb. Anyway, the guy who played Earl Partridge, Jason Robards, his whole dying monologue, his kind of like words of a dying man speech is just so good.
Yeah.
He delivers it
that was Jason Robards.
impeccably.
I just image searched him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a great scene. Like, so haunting.
Oh, yeah.
And so it touches your soul as the performance kind of is just so heartfelt, it sounds. And the things that he's saying, like, let me see if I can find the quote.
And Philip Seymour Hoffman
Partridge.
essentially is just a foil for him, but the audience is almost Philip Seymour Hoffman in a lot of the scenes with the two of them.
Yeah. He's doing like a confessional. And
Philip Seymour Hoffman and the audience are the priests to whom he's confessing.
So beautiful. And I cheated on her over and over and over again because I wanted to be a man, and I didn't want her to be a woman, a smart, free person who was something. My fucking mind then. So stupid, that fucking mind. Stupid. Jesus Christ. What would I think? Did I think for what I'd done? She was my wife for 23 years. I went behind her over and over. Fucking asshole that I am. I'd go out and I'd come home and get in her bed and say, I love you. Jack's mother. His mother, Lily. These two that I had and I lost. This is the regret that you make. This is the regret that you make. And there's something you take. And the blah, blah. Something. Give me a cigarette.
So that was a really great scene. I also kind of liked, or I think the other one that was good was the serious man, or he's not the serious man. He's the guy from Fargo.
Oh, William H. Macy.
William H. Macy playing Drew or something like that, or
the former child actor, whatever that was.
The former Wunderkind.
Yep. Donnie Smith.
Donnie Smith, that's it.
Quiz Kid.
His Benjamin Needham. Oh no, that's a little Donnie. Yeah, William H. Macy. There we go.
Yeah, it's William H. Macy.
That scene was really great when he's in the bar and he's having like a I was smart but now I'm stupid moment as he's like trying to mentally joust wits with the gay guy who's just like really articulate and is really put together, and they're both like into the same really buff and like hunky bartender guy because they're both gay. And it's so funny that it's funny in like a Pagliacci sense that like, it's just so sad, but the circumstances and the way he deals with not being able to understand himself lead him to do these really stupid and
he doesn't understand how he
things.
Comes off.
Not only does he not understand how he comes off, he doesn't understand how he wants to get what he thinks he wants, and how that hurts him more by trying to pursue these other outlets to become these other things that he thinks other people want to be, which ultimately make him even worse off towards other people.
It compounds. It has a snowballing effect.
There you go. His problems compound in his pursuits to better himself because I think he's misdirected. So it was a really cool way of kind of seeing that play out. So these scenarios were really great. I think the way that we summarized it was perfect, in that it kind of touches on everyone's little issues they're having in their life. Like I said, a lot of this focuses on, on what it means to be loved, or how one handles love when they have it or they're trying to get it,
Yeah. Or even on a simple level, what people want.
Mm-hmm.
What do they want at all? Or what do they have as a result of their want,
Mm-hmm.
John C. Reilly wants to be loved in a singular, intimate way. William H. Macy wants that, but he also wants the acceptance of a society that lifted him up maybe too early in life. Tom Cruise wants to wear a mask that's so thick that you can barely tell his old face is even still there.
Mm-hmm.
Like they all want, like, what do they, I don't know.
Well, they're coping with the love they used to have. So William H. Macy, Quiz Kid Donnie Smith, had the love of the public, and he's hurt that he's no longer special anymore, and that he's currently living a life of just utter mediocrity and just completely, life is going nowhere and it just seems to be getting worse around him. And, it's like when you've tasted riches or fame, losing it, how can you go back when your glory years are literally when he was like 10, right?
Yeah.
That sucks. But he also has
Absolutely.
like that really fucked up thing where it's like, yeah, my dad took all my money and I gave me nothing. And like, I completely understand.
That is a thing that happened in the 70s.
Oh, fuck. It happens in the 90s.
Yeah. There's like a law now that parents are not allowed to touch their child's money made from things like television appearances, acting, things like that. Yeah, no, I feel you. That's
right. I love the parallel that's drawn with the current Quiz Kid champion. Yeah, where you see the same thing basically happening to this new little kid and having to deal with probably the same road that Donnie Smith has walked on, but he's a little bit more self-aware, I think, of his circumstances, which also give you a little bit of hope. But there is a little bit of sense of hopelessness in that it doesn't sound like things are changing, but it does at least sound like he knows what he needs in order to maybe not fall into the same traps of Donnie. So, again, John C. Reilly's thing was great, where his thing is like, I have a very stressful life, so I want a girl or a lady or a partner that's not too demanding, is very quiet at home, like the most boring thing ever, right? He's trying to do like a dating thing.
So fun little aside before you go on with stuff that worked for you. This movie was born as a prototype wherein Paul Thomas Anderson and John C. Reilly would drive around the San Fernando Valley with a 16mm camera and John C. Reilly in a police uniform, and they would act out like they were just doing like beat stops for a police officer. And apparently they had to stop when someone got in a fight in front of them in a restaurant, and some lady goes, "Officer, you have to stop this."
Oh no.
And he was like, No. I'm not the guy for this. So
wow, that's cool. I didn't know that.
yeah.
I really liked his those beat monologuing to nobody.
Yes.
It's so funny when they pan out and you just see the shotgun in the partner's seat because he doesn't have a partner.
Yeah.
To compound the loneliness or just the fact that he's just completely shit on it in all things. It's funny.
Yeah.
So like I said, all that writing, all those characters, the fact that everyone is really so memorable is just outstanding in this movie. The cinematography is great. I must say, Philip Seymour Hoffman, his performance was excellent. I think I told you on when we watched The Master, I think it was his first movie of mine that I'd seen, and I loved it so much. And then I see him in this movie, and I'm like, oh my god, he's fucking great. Too bad he's fucking dead. Ugh.
I know, gosh.
Yeah, just when I'm starting to unravel this really excellent actor, I'm like, oh,
he's one of the greats. He's been in some awesome movies and some awful movies, and he's always one of the highlights.
Yeah.
Fucking. Oh man, what a career.
I love all the writing. I think there's so many. When we talk about deliberate cameras, deliberate staging, this movie exudes that. And
yes, and that's something Paul Thomas Anderson has only gotten better at since he's continued to make movies.
It's such a pleasant movie to watch where
oh god, yeah.
What it feels like you're watching feels so deliberate. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's so amazing.
It's a beautiful dream, essentially.
Mm-hmm. I liked all the music choice. I like the lady that does the soundtrack to this.
Oh, all the covers, One Is the Loneliest Number and stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah, that lady. I forget her name.
So well done.
Let me see what her name is, just so I can give her props. Cause
Amy Mann.
Amy Mann. She does really excellent work in this. It's a soundtrack made for the movie, which I think is just... You don't see too many movies like that these days.
No, not at all.
the only one that really comes to mind.
It's all what hits can we inject into this to, make it accessible for a wide enough audience that
There's
will
no
make
bravery.
our money back.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no courage in that sort of arena currently.
And the music complements the movie so well, and then the movie actually runs with it and has a moment where the characters also kind of get involved with the music because it feels like it
goes from
co-developed.
Diegetic to extra diegetic for a while. Yeah.
Diegetic.
Diegetic meaning it goes from being the sound that the audience experiences to the sound of the world in the movie for a moment there. In a way, it seems to.
I was going to make a bad Pepto-Bismol joke, but I'll refrain.
Heartburn, diegetic, and upset stomachs.
Yeah, Pepto-Bismol. So you took it. You can have that one.
No, you put the tag on it with the brand, so, it's all you. I just filled in the gaps where I knew they were.
If you could see me, I'm doing a low bow.
A good bow. 90 degrees.
Oh yeah, a proper Asian bow, if ever there was. So the music was really outstanding. The only other movie I can really think of that creates music for the movie is like, the Hello Darkness, My Old Friend, the Scarborough Fair movie. What's it called? The Graduate.
Oh sure.
Where they got old S-Man and G-Funk involved.
Yeah,
and
that they
even
did.
though they only didn't like have a lot of their music ready in time, it still is cool that they wrote it for the movie and it really complements what's happening, and it's very creative.
Well, one of the things, if you listen to The Sound of Silence, the original version, I think the version that was with the movie, the drums rush and then drag and then rush and then drag, which just an interesting little. I mean, that's from my own observation as a drummer, so that might not be 100% proper, but like they slow down and speed up, and it does not sound like they meant to do that. It sounds like the drummer was just, they needed a take and they got one. But at any rate, go on with what worked for you in this.
Well, on the topic of old S-Man and G-Funk and The Sound of Silence, the scene that comes to mind now from any movie for that song is The Watchman's funeral, where they're all standing in the rain and they're having that moment, and it's like it's totally circumvented what it was kind of aping or paying homage to. Yeah. And I think that's really funny that it's completely replaced in my brain Sound of Silence, which is, like I said, for The Graduate. Really good. I think the opening was so funny. I had no idea what it was alluding
the little
to.
bit about coincidence?
Yeah. I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Even like John C. Reilly's like Reno 911 stop in the very beginning is just so bizarre, and like how things just kind of come back to that in a weird way, in a Crash sort of way.
Yeah.
That was really funny.
Oh my gosh. And can we remember not to forget Don Cheadle's character in this movie? I don't know why he didn't get first billing on the Wikipedia article I read the cast off of.
Don Cheadle?
Oh, wait. I'm thinking of a completely different
He's the black guy.
Yeah, I am thinking of a different movie.
I don't think there were any black people in this movie.
No, there definitely are not.
Are you talking about the Mexican guy?
No. I was thinking of a different movie.
Luis
I was thinking of a different movie with Don Cheadle in it.
Well, that's why he didn't have top billing. Damn it. Now it's all starting to make sense.
Oh my God, I'm thinking of fucking Boogie Nights. I'm an idiot. I'm such an idiot. Different Paul Thomas Anderson movie. I am retarded. Anyways, go on.
One moment that I really, really liked in this movie, or there's like a good portion of the movie when they're doing the quiz show where there's a lot of like classical music and opera references, and I'm like, oh, I know that. And when they ask the question like, here's the line in English, translate it, say what the original opera was and what's the line in French or in this language, I'm like, oh, that's Carmen. I knew that.
Nice.
And here's a line: love is a rebellious bird that nobody can tame, and it's all in vain to call it if it chooses to refuse. And I was like, oh, I know that. And I was like, oh, it's just so perfect for what this movie kind of
That's essentially the movie's plot line in a nutshell.
Yeah, or at least a large portion of it, because so many of them try and fail. And I apply that to my real life, and I think about it, I'm like, wow, it's a good quote for thought. You know what I mean?
It
And when it happens in the
absolutely
opera,
is.
you just don't even think about it. You remember that pretty song, but
Yep.
that's a very powerful quote to take away. And when magnified by the surrounding consequences and plot of the movie, it's just like, oh man, this really does
Yeah.
have a lot more truth in it than you would give it credit for in
Right.
hearing it in the opera. And so
Oh,
I started
gosh.
to perceive my dating websites and whatever like that. I'm like, yeah, man, this is the story of that. You know, you can't, if love so, refuses or whatever the fuck. And I'm like, yeah.
Yep.
One thing that really got me down, I'm going to tell a story. I became friends with Joey Hopper on Facebook not too long ago. And
So our mutual friend, one of my best friends.
yeah, that was for Paul. So our mutual friend Joey Hopper, and she recently started posting about, like, oh, I'm fucking in OkCupid. I know what I'm doing. Like, this is so weird and gross. And then she started posting like all these, like, wow, this fucking idiot. Look at what he says. And like, oh man, I can't believe like.
Oh, kind of
and,
like highlights from her OkCupid experience, you mean?
lowlights made for comedy.
Yeah, but you like notable funny shit from it, essentially, right?
And that, yeah, and I was like, oh, it made me feel really bad. I was like, it made me feel really pathetic of like just.
Well, wait
know.
until you read that New Yorker story cat person that I posted on my Facebook, because you will then
boy.
have more fuel for that fire of embarrassment through that. So, just a fun little extra thing.
It's depressing because when I read that, I was like, it's like, even though I don't know or think that I am that way, it was like, man, this is kind of like, it's very mean spirited, and like, I don't necessarily approve. You know what I mean? And
It's
like,
very judgy in a way that we want to strive not to be.
yeah, this is hurtful for if you perhaps can empathize with those that are falling in these pits of like having a stupid profile, or God bless they try. And I'm like, oh. And so I had to unsubscribe from Joey because I was like, this is just depressing me every day. There was like a good couple days where I was like, oh man, this makes me feel really bad. And I was like, I just got to get this off my feed. This shit's just not good for me.
Sure.
That's the story. And if you hear this, Joey, he made me feel bad.
Oh.
But yeah, if it chooses to refuse, well, that was in French.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I could go on and on and on. I'm really dithering at this point. I'm just saying plot points. So I think I will give it away to you.
And we've gone on a lot of tangents, so.
Yeah. Paul.
Well, I'm going to keep it simple as heck. The stuff that you mentioned is obviously in my mind, but I think the stuff that you didn't mention that I want to call attention to, or that you maybe did mention that I want to re-go over, is first off the acting, which does not feature Don Cheadle. I apologize. I'm conflating Paul Thomas Anderson movies. When I was in high school, I would have been the type of person to shit on someone like Tom Cruise, because he is on a lot of levels, he kind of seems like one of those actors who he knows the expressions that go with the emotions, and all of his characters match that sort of kind of, oh, well, when I'm sad, me as this actor, I go like this. But this movie, along with several of his other earlier movies, showcase the fact that he really truly has an amazing range as an actor, that because of the Scientology stuff, because of celebrity scandals, he doesn't get a lot of credit for, because people are too busy talking about his personal life, or they're too busy.
Well, he also makes it
about
his business to inject that into a lot of his other things.
Surely,
So.
and that's understandable, but I think he's a really fantastic actor, and this movie is like, he has the most energetic of highs and the deepest, darkest, saddest lows. And I found his performance fascinating. As you mentioned, Philip Seymour Hoffman was amazing. John C. Reilly was amazing. Camera work, I want to go back over, just because, to me, more than almost any other movie I've ever seen, maybe with the exception of We Need to Talk About Kevin, this movie has...
Who do we need to talk about?
Kevin. This
Oh,
movie
okay.
has an exceptional dreamlike quality. All these beautiful, well-rehearsed camera moves,
Mm-hmm.
all these long takes holding on people's faces.
The lighting,
The
the coloring in every shot.
Yeah, everything
Yeah.
is so well done. You know when you watch like those video essays about like David Fincher's kind of all-knowing, all-seeing camera that kind of
Mm-hmm.
moves like a ghost throughout many of his scenes.
Mm-hmm.
This feels like that, but not in the uncanny David Fincher-y way. It feels like that in a very personal way,
Mm.
which I don't know that I could describe how it does that, but everything is so smooth, everything is so slow, everything is so controlled, but it doesn't feel like David Fincher where it's like, oh, this is a god operating a camera. This is like, it's very in there, it's very personal,
Mm-hmm.
and yet still so in control of what it's doing. I love the camera work in this movie so much. I
On that
also
point,
that
oh,
yes.
can I bring up one scene that I really really admired
Yeah.
in the way of camera work? In the quiz show, you see most of the quiz show, especially in the beginning, from the angle of the camera or how it would be panning like to the contestants, Jimmy, what's his name, on the podium and all this stuff.
Yeah.
The sound guys, the dude in the booth. But when it breaks down and you see kind of like the perspective shift to the little new genius kid, whatever his name is, Steve or whatever,
Yeah.
the camera shifts as well, and you see the set as a set, where it's
Yeah.
not just for the public anymore. This is like,
Oh, this is
for
where a
the
bunch
kid.
of people work.
Yeah, seeing the reality of,
Yeah.
the host slumping over the podium as he's in great pain,
Yeah.
or
Or the kid experiencing all this stress because all these adults are trying to push him in these different directions. I think
Yeah.
the character's name was Stanley Spector.
Will Stanley.
Yeah.
And you see the curtains and all the facade, you see all the cardboard and the fakeness of this world that they're trying to portray, and I thought that was so beautiful
Yeah.
as it portrays.
It's like when I went on
or-
Wheel of Fortune, you see on TV the stage from this wide angle lens and it looks fucking massive. And you get
Yeah.
in the sound stage and it's not that big. There are only so many rows that go back, whereas it's made to look like it's this huge sweeping, panning shot that's on a crane on a super wide angle lens, probably like an 18 or a 24. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's right. None of this is what television makes it, you know? The music, I'll go back over again. That cover of One is, so beautiful. And just a little boop, 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 boop. Oh, one of my favorite things of all time.
Number that you'll ever do. Two can be as bad as one. It's the loneliest number since the number one.
Sounds very Beatles inspired as well.
Yes. Also, just going back to Tom Cruise, if you have not seen this movie, please go YouTube search Tom Cruise Magnolia highlights, because you get to hear such wonderful cinematic gems as "suck my big fat fucking sausage" and "respect the cock, tame the cunt," things like that. Just really awful things that you never want to hear anyone say. But when Tom Cruise's character says them, they're just such a pure form of comedy. Like, before I ever saw this movie, my friend just sent me a video on YouTube, and it was before you could see thumbnails, so he just texted me this video. I open it up, and Tom Cruise just says into the camera, "Suck my big fat fucking sausage!" And I was just like, what the fuck is this? It made me laugh so fucking hard. His character is such a caricature of those, like, douche bro, red pill men's rights activist douchebags. And I love every second that he is on the screen. And the fact that at the end of the movie, you take his character and his character's pain seriously after all of that is so beautiful to me. I can't describe the feeling of delight I get every time his character comes around near the end.
Mm-hmm.
I'll end that for me. What in this movie didn't work for you? Is there anything that bothered you, that stood out, or that didn't feel like it fit very well?
Yeah, I think the girls' soapbox moment was a little bit preachy. Like, that context didn't feel particularly right, but she needed
Sure.
one. Where
Yep.
she's freaking out in the pharmacist's office. And she's like, you don't know what I'm going through. Shame on you. It was a
Yeah.
nice, well delivered, fine. But that felt one of the most alien scenes in the whole movie.
Sure.
And where everything else kind of slides into, or rather builds up to it, or it feels good in that moment. That felt very, it didn't blend well. It was a bit bizarre.
And if I can add to that a little bit, I feel like, if this isn't too insulting or harsh to say, I have a little bit of trouble seeing Julianne Moore as anything but the similarities between all of her various characters. I know I kind of went through that when I was talking about Tom Cruise, but I feel like she is one of those actors who, to me, has the potential for great range, but I don't know that she uses it every opportunity that she gets. If that, I don't want to be disrespectful because I think she's a good actor, but I don't know that I would say that she's at her best in this movie. Just because I feel like that, like, to me, that sort of screaming that she was doing to the pharmacists, that felt kind of like that's the standard for someone having a breakdown in a pharmacy office. You would get that same performance out of Jennifer Lawrence or, whatever actor had the agent that connected them with Paul Thomas Anderson at that time. I don't want to be disrespectful, but
it felt like she was acting,
Yeah. It felt, yes, exactly. It felt a little bit more on the nose, kind of ham-fisted acting, whereas everyone else seems to be at or near their best in this movie.
Yeah, it also doesn't help.
That's what I meant to say. It feels on the nose where everyone else feels a little bit more subtle.
It also doesn't help that her scene is written kind of in that way where it really didn't have a place.
Yeah.
So she kind of got a raw deal in that respect.
I definitely agree.
Yeah. The other soapbox that felt kind of bad was Little Stanley, the Wunder Kid. His soapbox was kind of really bizarre. Up until that point, he was an excellent actor. Oh man, he played that type of kid so well. He was so believable. And like the other kids around him were kind of shitty, but it's fine because they kind of needed to be that shitty character. But when it came for his grandstand, that was also written in a weird injected way.
Yes.
And it was delivered in a very, I kind of don't really know what emotion I'm having right now feeling, where you're supposed to feel defensive and hurt at, I guess, your circumstances. A lot of things that you can't control because you have to allow other people to control you in this situation. It didn't feel like he hit that. What he was saying was fine as it was written, but it didn't feel right in the context of the scene or the movie or the way it was acted. So that was a low point.
Okay, I can dig that.
I thought the Deus Ex was actually really cool. I wanted to bring this up.
Oh, the frogs.
God damn. That's
the only word I'm going to say about that is the word frogs.
It was hilarious. Also very realistic. In just the physics, I suppose.
Sure. I can just imagine some poor production assistant with a bucket full of rubber frogs just standing on the top of a building waiting for the go-ahead via a loudspeaker. Oh, my goodness.
But I think this brings me to another point with this Deus Ex. it kind of rights all the wrongs that I've been boiling to this moment, right? Because people kind of like
take a step back, look at
and
things.
they have to see outside of themselves in a way.
Yeah.
But it's also, I loved it. I loved it for its like weird Wes Anderson-y kind of like campiness.
Yes. Especially because Paul Thomas Anderson has never done anything like that before, and also has never done anything like that since.
I think
it's a trap that a filmmaker could easily fall into.
Right. And
like, I can have a wacky Deus Ex Machina in the end of my movie, and then everything is going to be okay for everyone who had any sort of problem. And it's like, that's not how that works at all.
It borders like a Shyamalanian kind of, oh man. But it's not like a bad twist. It just kind of happens out of nowhere. But this movie is good that it's self-aware because it knows this is a very ridiculous moment, and it kind of jokes about it with itself, where like it pans to the poster or the painting. I brought this up. I didn't like the scene where, you know, our show host is having a very low moment, really bad time, and his intervention doesn't feel very good. Like, you say, oh, sigh of relief, but when you take a step back, like, it only takes like a second to take a step back from the reality of like, oh, thank God. Said, well, you kind of just look up for him and say, what the hell? Look outside, give it a day, and you're right back, you know, where you were before the frogs. The frogs.
I'll just say before it becomes my turn to say what didn't work for me, that was also a big point of contention for me, was that didn't solve anything, but for the time in which the movie takes place, it solved everything. It's like the fairy tale, where the fairy tale ends with Cinderella and the prince getting married. What it doesn't show is the 30 years of built-up resentment and misery that they have as a married couple.
Yeah.
You know, so I totally agree with that.
This kind of Watch Mask where, you know, oh my God, Dr. Manhattan, you asshole. Kind of, it makes people step back, but that kind of gives them purpose. This doesn't really do anything, but kind of...
It just pauses them.
Yeah, it makes things... Yeah, it pauses them. That's a good way of putting it. Or it's just a giant joke that, like, everything is ridiculous. Look at how ridiculous this is, too. And then people can kind of step out of their roles and not see themselves as a performer, I guess. So I like the concept. I like the symbolism. I like, you know, what it does for the plot. But there are certain moments in that where I'm like, what's her name? Julianne Moore. When her frog intervention is kind of like, yeah, I don't know if this would have worked out for you. You know, like... for the sake of the movie, it has to happen so that everyone can kind of reset and be happy. And I like that. I love that because I want it to be a happy ending. I not necessarily foam at the mouth, but I'm hungry for there to be a happy ending, you know, because it would just be terrible for all the misery to compound and boil over and for you to walk away with everyone's miserable, you know. So I'm glad that the frog thing happens. Last point of contention... So you know what I mean? I have a mixed feeling about the frogs.
Sure.
Last thing I didn't quite like was the little black kid. Like, it wasn't quite Donnie Darko-esque enough. It wasn't prophetic enough. It wasn't... It felt a little shoehorned. And...
Sure.
While I appreciate the character of the little black kid, I don't know if it needed to keep coming back to him in that way. It did help add to the sense of fantasy that this movie, that it so expertly does, but I was kind of like, I'm lukewarm with the little black kid. I don't know if it really needed that arc, you know?
Yeah.
It might have been something that they did early on, and they didn't feel like they could write it out. I don't know. I'm not sure what that was about. But, Paul, what didn't work for you in this movie?
I'll just echo your sentiments. I mean... some of the things you mentioned, I don't think were bad choices, but I think they just smell like, oh, this guy has only made a few movies and he's gonna keep making them, and he's going to fix little things like this. Like, I think I've said on this podcast, and I've said in real life, and I will continue to say, I think There Will Be Blood is one of the greatest movies of all time. I don't say that in any sort of hyperbole. I've felt that since the day I saw it. It's near perfect in almost every technical aspect. The acting is great. The writing is amazing. The characters are well done. I think some of those things that you didn't like, that I would just echo instead of adding to, they smell of someone who, obviously has talent, but is still getting started in the movie industry. So, I mean, I agree with everything you said. And I really, really, I almost appreciate those mistakes more than I would if this was, if this was a bad movie with some good qualities. That's one thing. This is a good movie with a very few things that just weren't quite 100% there. And so I think they're like beauty marks. They're like a little mole above the lip of the most beautiful woman you've ever seen in your life.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Right? It's just, they're things that are there, essentially. So, in closing for this movie, would you recommend this to your peers, your family, your friends, loved ones?
100%. I would caution, this is a 3-hour runtime now, and 3 hours and 5, really. And I remember when I first saw the runtime, I was like, oh, Paul, uh-oh. Because someone had told me before this, and I'm pretty sure they were serious. I just think they might just be total idiots. But they said that this movie, Jigsaw is like Crash, and this is like Jigsaw. Magnolia is like Jigsaw. So I'm like, oh man. And I'm like, I told you this, remember? I snapped this to you. And I was like, am I going to see John C. Reilly, like 3 hours of John C. Reilly getting his like limbs kind of chopped off, or am I going to see like some dismemberment here? I mean, what's going to happen? And
see what Kevin really did to his dad.
Yeah. Screw no spoilers. But it's like, you're like, oh no, it's only just a little bit of dismemberment. All right, good. So he just uses like a couple fingers.
Yeah.
So that aside, the 3-hour runtime can be a little bit of a bugaboo to overcome. If you want to sit down with this movie, it'll pay you in dividends. This is really an excellent movie.
Especially emotionally. Yeah. Emotional dividends for sure.
I definitely recommend this to everybody, except for those that, they have problems with the quote-unquote art house. But even then, I would still give it my seal of approval. Like, yeah, it was totally worth it. I still think you'd enjoy it. There's a lot to love in this. And if you don't like it, maybe, your life is richer for it. Maybe, I don't know. I think your life will be richer for it. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies where I can very much look back fondly and say, I am very glad I saw this movie.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And to you, Mr. Paul, Mr. Mogan.
I would recommend this, and I have been recommended this by some of the people whose taste in movies I respect the most in the world. So as a result, big recommendation from me, and thank you for all the people who recommended this to me before I watched it, because just really great fucking movie.
I need to thank John C. Reilly. Thank you, John C. Reilly.
Always thank John C. Reilly for your health.
Doctors, for my health, for everyone's health.
For everyone's health.
You did a great job.
You did a great job.
And if it wasn't for my love of you, I don't know if I ever would have seen this movie.
Right. And now we move on to the true nightmare.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about The Social Network by David Fincher?
Well, let me tell you about Edward Snowden, a.k.a. The Social Network, a 2010 movie about how our Orwellian nightmare began.
Pretty much.
With the pompousness and Bill Gatesian attitudes of one Mark Zuckerberg. A Harvard asshole. He betrays his friends and those who seek his help. A chip on his shoulder. He goes forth into the world. He can accept no fault of his own. And this movie is a giant propaganda piece of forgiving Mark Zuckerberg for all the nightmares
I disagree so
that will
hardcore.
ensue. For all the nightmares that will ensue as a result of his short-sightedness and inability to put others above himself and really will only do what is better for him. Anyway, this is a movie about Mark Zuckerberg and how he created the social network. That had a little bit of half troll in that.
Which is based on the book The Accidental Billionaires, which is the true story of this occurring. And a lot of this is taken directly from real life transcripts of what went down.
Sure. Also directed by David Fincher. Yeah.
So we're watching two movies by two of the greatest directors of our generation.
Sure.
Today.
I think I started last time, right? So
yeah.
Why don't we start with you, Mr. Morgan? What worked for you in Edward Snowden?
Fuck off. Pretty much everything in this movie I think is brilliant because in that classic David Fincher's camera is a god type of way, it does not pass judgment. It just shows you different characters reacting to things. I love the writing. Aaron Sorkin wrote The West Wing, and he also wrote this. This has the snappy West Wing dialogue, the people being far too clever for, like ungodly, unrealistically clever, ungodly, unrealistically like quick-witted. I love that shit so much. And I think Aaron Sorkin did an awesome job on this script. A lot of which was adapted directly from the depositions of Mark Zuckerberg and the Winklevoss twins and Eduardo Saverin, and a lot of which was taken directly from Mark Zuckerberg's live journal that he actually wrote about his girlfriend at the time. The cinematography is gorgeous. There's that one scene at the English boat race where it looks as if everything is done using a tilt shift lens. All me and my cinematographer friends freaked out when we saw that in the theaters because it was so gorgeous. And come to find out, they shot flat images and the tilt shift lens effect was all in post-production. It was all digital. They composited things. The Winklevoss twins are fucking brilliant. The guy who plays the Winklevoss twins, Armie Hammer, he is only playing one at a time. The other one is literally his face superimposed onto another man.
Oh, really?
With the exact same body type as him. They didn't do any split screen for his characters.
That's so funny.
That is digital technology, the way digital technology should fucking be used in a movie. That is so beyond brilliant.
Like the clumps.
Exactly. Like Nutty Professor 2. Or Fatty's Fart 2 if you're a Tropic Thunder fan. But all of that is great. I think, in my personal opinion, that the movie does not purport to comment on anyone's ethics. It just gives you bits of each side, and not even close to the whole of every side, but bits of each side. And I will say, I do think it gives us enough that we can assume that Eduardo Saverin is a little bit of a whiny ass who didn't contribute enough. But I also think that on the other end of the spectrum, if we are to believe what we are seeing on screen, the character of Mark Zuckerberg is a vindictive shithead who took little slights against him and made mountains out of molehills with them.
He's a fucking sociopath.
Yeah, he essentially exhibits every behavior of a sociopath, and just really, really scary levels of coldness and cleverness.
He's like the accountant.
No, he's like fucking Kevin, dude. He's like both. If Kevin learned to play by the rules of a society.
I say he's like the accountant because he exhibits little Aspergery syndromes of like not really being able to connect with people emotionally, but still not to the same extent as our our favorite groper, our favorite molester. What's his name? Ben Affleck. But
is he a groper?
He is. He got that hashtag Me Too'd. It was hashtag
really?
him too'd. Yeah.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. So he's yeah.
Well, that sucks for the people he groped. I would say it sucks for him that he's rich, so he can live for the rest of his life and never make another cent. So
I think it'll blow over. He's not the worst of it. He just groped an underage girl on MTV.
That's pretty bad. Yeah, I'm gonna go. Ahead and say
that'll
he
blow
should
over.
Stop doing shit.
It's just,
yeah, but still, it's just something you shouldn't do, and we should remove people who do shit like that from our society. But anyways,
we have Donald Trump as president. So
yeah,
can't be that
that's
bad.
A whole other conversation, my friend.
Make it great.
I also really love. I don't know. I love how this movie finds a tragic anti-hero in, and I want to be specific. This is the character of Mark Zuckerberg we're talking about. This is not Mark Zuckerberg necessarily. It's taken inspiration from real life, but we know this as the character of Mark Zuckerberg. This character is objectively a bad person. And yet, though we are never given proof of some of the things he is accused of, we feel for him at times. I feel for him in the sense that when he says little factoids like, do you see any of your code on Facebook? He's technically right. And when he says things like, if your clients were the inventors of Facebook, they'd have invented Facebook, he's also technically right. I sympathize with him in those moments because at what point does the ship of Theseus, is that what it is? Ship of Theseus? Yeah. At what point is the ship of Theseus no longer the ship of Theseus? You know?
What? No.
The ship of Theseus is this old tale that Theseus is given a ship, and every time something goes wrong with it or he gets into a naval battle or something, they replace a piece until after a certain period of time, none of the original pieces remain. And it's like, I don't sympathize with someone who took money from people and then diluted their ability to profit from it. And I don't sympathize with people who talk about women the way he talks about his ex-girlfriend. And I don't sympathize with sociopaths. But when he receives the ship of Theseus is this idea that we should have a social network that is exclusive to Harvard. Then he takes the ship of Theseus and he upgrades it. He adds 21st century cannons, and he adds a watchtower that you can, make yourself a cup of coffee on. And he adds the ability to go Mach speed in water. He makes, at what point is this no longer the Winklevoss's thing? Because to me, I don't sympathize with any of his behaviors, but I do sympathize with the idea that after the exclusivity of Harvard thing is over, Facebook is almost entirely his intellectual property. That's what bit he took from them. And so when things go wrong for him, or when Rashida Jones's character asks him, let me ask you a simple question. Why were you not at the party where Sean Parker got busted for cocaine use? In those moments, because of the fact that he took it and ran so much farther with it than others were able to, I do sympathize with his character, even though he has done ignominious deeds. He has done shameful things. He's done bad things to hurt people. I sympathize on some levels. And that, I think, takes a lot of skill as a filmmaker to make a character as rough and as bad and as harsh and as unforgiving as Mark Zuckerberg into a character that you can sympathize with. that was me on my soapbox. You're more than free to disagree with that. But I think that if you watch this movie several times over a long period of time, as I have, you will find that even though his character is a very bad person, there are things in him with which to sympathize very greatly. There, off my soapbox. So like I said, cinematography.
Wow. I felt like I was watching Magnolia.
Cinematography, yeah, you might as well have been. Cinematography, the acting was amazing. The writing was very tight and very well done. And also, Trent Reznor of the Nine Inch Nails once again knocks out the park with the score. The score was amazing. What worked for you in this movie?
I liked a lot of the moments of visual comedy in this movie.
There are quite a few. The beer being thrown against the frame of the camera is a big one for me.
The Jewish party and just how like weird that felt. Like the joke was just told in like what was happening on screen, and just the way everyone was dressed versus the way everyone was talking.
Yeah. And Eduardo Saverin comes bouncing up to fucking Eduardo comes bouncing up to Mark Zuckerberg like, "Hey man," trying to like look fake cool. It's so funny.
Yeah.
It's like, the reek of desperation of college guys trying to get laid.
Yeah.
He's trying to be a parody of himself and he's failing at everything.
I liked how one-dimensional they kind of make all the characters. Minus, I
don't feel any of the characters feel
well.
one-dimensional.
Okay, they're one-dimensional. You know their role. They fit their role to a T as you expect in a movie like this, but they still feel dynamic enough where it doesn't feel like we're watching
real people.
The Infiltrator, right?
The accountant.
No, I wouldn't say the accountant, actually.
Oh, the fucking Bryan Cranston movie.
Yeah, where like they're all just like one-noted cartoon characters. In this movie, they kind of fulfill the same role as their cartoon character, I guess, person in the story demands, but it doesn't feel... It
doesn't feel ham-fisted.
Cross the line. Yes, correct. It didn't cross the line to being ham-fisted and groany. So that's actually a plus. Because me coming into this movie, I was already like very predisposed to like, I know exactly what I want or what this movie's going to be. This is kind of a reason why I didn't want to watch it because I already know what it's going to be about. But they did it in such a way where even though it did fulfill all my expectations, it didn't make me go, oh.
It didn't make
that's
you
a good
groan.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing. The characters didn't make me groan, minus a couple instances I'll bring later.
Yeah.
The use of... Fincher's got such an impeccable eye. Just minor details of just like when they're drinking with Sean Parker in California, or wherever they're having that first business meeting. I thought it was like beautifully shot, and like the way the camera kept changing to like focus on like the sushi and the drinks, and like how like the camera kept like keep panning and moving. Everything just felt so cool. Like you're excited with the scene because of the way it's shot, regardless of what Justin Timberlake is saying.
Can we acknowledge that the aura of Justin Timberlake is, in terms of our culture, is just an aura of cool, which is why it's perfect that he was cast in that role, because we need the audience to see Sean Parker the way Mark Zuckerberg does. So what do? We cast someone who is passable as an actor, but who is undeniably cool in our culture.
He also did a pretty good job.
I think he's a great actor in general.
Yeah.
But I would say that his passability as an actor is one thing, but I think the bigger thing is that he is just so fucking cool. Justin Timberlake has been cool since NSYNC and remains cool to this day, and then he happens also to have some acting chops.
Yeah, I'd agree to that.
Yeah.
I liked in the beginning when they were like first making the Facebook as like as like a rate the girl thing. I thought that was really funny. That's like
something that actually happened, by the way.
That's like shit me and my friends do. We play Bumble or we play like those swipe game, like the swipe dating apps. Like nope, oh no, fat body, nope. We basically bring out like our best Arlie Ermy in terms of Arlie Ermy in the way of that one movie that you love so
Tearing
much
people
that I hated.
down.
Yeah.
Full Metal Jacket.
Full Metal Jacket. So when they're showing that scene of like all the guys doing that, I thought it was really funny.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's definitely something that we've done before.
And that's something that appeals to people's basic instincts because we evolved to discriminate. We evolved to say, oh, this is a secondary sex characteristic that I desire and immediately be attracted to it. Or we evolved to say, oh, this big cat has big teeth. I should run away from it. We have evolved to discriminate, essentially. Discrimination is an evolutionary tool for survival. And so when you make it also a social tool for fun, it combines something we crave in terms of, being the judge of another person with something that is evolutionarily innate to us.
Paul Morgan, the Nazi, the eugenicist, ladies and
I'm
gentlemen.
not. No.
I'm just kidding.
You're going to impact my future political career. I'm never going to get to be a Washington state senator.
Are you kidding me? Then run in Idaho. They love racists.
Yeah, run in Alabama. All I have to do is beat a child molester who's banned from several malls for preying on children. Oh, man. That's going to be out of the news by the time we put this episode out.
We'll just
people will never
date
forget
our podcast.
I'm talking about Roy Moore, Senate candidate from Alabama.
Who?
Roy Moore, Senate candidate from Alabama, who's been accused several times of preying on young women. He's banned from several malls in his hometown for preying on young girls.
What?
Famously has dated women way less than half his age. Just a really big pile of shit. Anyways.
Wow. This was in the news so long ago, and then
this is in the news right now when we're recording this, but it's going to be so long ago now that when we release this, no one's going to know.
I was recording this for the future, damn it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm an asshole.
That was the joke.
Yeah, what can we make up that's actually going to happen by the time we release this about Trump?
Well, Trump did just move the embassy to Jerusalem.
That's right, yep. As he acknowledged that it was stated that it was the capital of Israel or something.
I think him and Shinzo Abe are
gonna have a gay love affair.
Well, that was kind of what I was alluding to, but it wasn't gonna be so overt.
Oh, okay.
But there you go. Oh my God!
I don't think
Abe and Donald Trump just had a gay love affair.
I don't think anything is too outlandish at this point to claim about this guy. But anyways, keep going with what you liked. We got off topic.
I mean, we pretty much went over all the things I loved. Roy Moore, moving the embassy to Jerusalem. Oh, we're talking about the movie. I was just talking about the fake news. I like the Winkle twins. I like their actor, whoever did those guys. I thought
Armie Hammer, man. Armie Hammer did a great job.
I think they had honestly like the most interesting stuff in the movie. Like
some of it, yeah.
You're automatically inclined to dislike them because they're rich jocks who are super white privilegey and whatever, and like economically.
Oh my God!
privileged.
One of the most satisfying scenes in the fucking movie is when they go talk to the president of Harvard, and he's basically like, "Fuck you guys! I don't give a shit about your fucking problems."
Yeah.
Oh my God! Because like you're right, you're conditioned not to like them. Because they're like the popular jock who's got a rich dad. It just so happens that their rich dad is like one of the richest dudes of all time. You know, like you're inclined to dislike them, and then they behave in a way that begets continual dislike, and then they get fucked.
And they're also like, let's go pound that nerd.
Yeah, which I think there is an inclination, even though I don't think Mark Zuckerberg is a sympathetic character, there is an inclination to dislike the people who are going against him. Maybe not Eduardo as much, but there is an inclination to dislike the Winklevoss twins because they're everything that you've seen your whole life about like the handsome white rich kids succeeding without a lot of effort because they didn't have to put a lot of effort in. So it's like you may not be made to like Mark. I don't think you are, but you are definitely made to dislike his opponents.
You're made to feel so sympathetic to Mark Zuckerberg to the point where you...
I disagree.
Well, to the point where you like feign likeness for Mark Zuckerberg. That's what bothers me. What you're saying is correct from an analytical standpoint, maybe because we're a little bit more removed. But the way the movie shoots it is like, everyone else around him is so much worse. And when you see him, like, his emotions, like his heart on his sleeve moments, so magnified, or there's just so much in focus to the movie or its scene,
Yeah.
that you're made to like him, even though it becomes a lot easier to forgive his stupid decisions in the context of how fast the plot is moving. So,
Yes, which it really happened over the course of, like a couple years. So we're
it's
seeing
a trick of the story.
Yes, exactly. I would
Movie
say
magic.
this is a matter of opinion, not a matter of fact, but I would say I don't like the Mark Zuckerberg in this movie, but I do, given all the context of all of the characters that the movie creates, at certain times sympathize with him. And I think that's an important distinction to make, because I think you were right. There are a lot of people who viewed this movie, came out liking the character of Mark Zuckerberg because he's vindictive and he gets what he wants, and he starts off as an underdog, and he starts off in a down position, much like Jackie Chan in many of his fights. But I don't think I fell into that trap as a viewer. I don't like the character. There are just times in which I sympathize with him because, like every other viewer, I just don't have all of the context.
Fair. I really don't know what else to say. I don't remember the score in this movie, honestly.
Oh my gosh. The fucking electronic version of the Hall of the Mountain King during the rowing scene was beautiful. The single piano notes with little bits of echo and synthesizer pads underneath them were so beautiful. I love so much of this movie, and the music is such a big part of that.
Can I ask you, you mentioned the camera thingy, the tilt camera.
The tilt shift lenses. Yeah.
Can you go into detail about that? Because I didn't know what the hell you were talking about when you were...
So tilt shift lens is a lens that has a fixture that mounts onto a camera and then has a movable lens head. So the front piece of glass and all of the optical glass in between the mount and the front are movable. And it creates an effect that makes things look either much smaller or much larger than they are by virtue of having a very, very tight depth of field or depth of focus. A famous use of the tilt shift lens would be in 28 Days Later, where Danny Boyle famously had small sections of London evacuated, essentially. He had people move out and he shut down streets and stuff like that. And then he would shoot single blocks of London from very high up on a tilt shift lens. And what that does is it has the effect of making the singular point of focus, which is the one character in that movie that starts off, be very, very small amongst everything else. It makes, like, if you Google search tilt shift photography, it makes real life scenes look like fake model scenes. Like, look up like tilt shift train yard, and it looks like you're looking at a model train. It looks like you're looking at someone who decided to take their dad's camera and strategically point it at a model city they had built in their garage and Photoshop a little bit of background onto it. It makes things look like toys. And what they do in this movie, though, is they have a digital tilt shift effect that gives you that sense of tight focus. But to me, what it does is it reads some of what the Winklevoss twins are thinking, or as they refer to them in the movie, the Winklevi. It reads using visual language as how the Winklevoss twins are feeling. They're there losing this rowing race, and nothing is in focus except their heads when they're shown. It's all blurred around them because they're not thinking about the race. They're not thinking about the prestige of performing in a sporting event in front of the royalty of England. They're thinking about the fact that they would rather be at home suing the shit out of Mark Zuckerberg. So it uses this effect that has very tight focus and very heavy portions of blur to create what is in these characters' heads, essentially. And I think that's so beautiful, not only because they didn't actually do it, but also because David Fincher is one of the masters of using film as a visual medium for storytelling. You have that conversation after the race where they're obviously distracted, and you have that conversation after that where they're talking with their business partner about, finally, let's sue this guy. But before any of that happens, you have this buildup of the race, which is like, these guys are not focused on the race. These are world-class athletes who rode for the United States in the Olympics. They are not at all focused on the race. They're focused on this other guy, and as a result, they lose the race because of the fact that they're not focused. And before we get to any of the dialogue on that subject, it's laid out in front of us visually. Brilliant filmmaking by David Fincher, as fucking always. I would suck his dick. I'm sucking his dick right now.
Can't get
I'm
into
practically
office.
doing that right now.
I mean, you could join the army, but you can't get into office. No.
Yeah.
Sorry, Paul.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Oh gosh.
You can get it lopped off if you want.
Yeah. Maybe I'll have to.
What? Shinzo Abe and Xi Jinping and Trump had a threesome? No way.
At one of those,
this is fake news.
At one of those hotels in the red light district of Thailand.
Oh, well, that could have been like a multi.
It was an 8-way.
Yeah, that's good luck. That's a good luck number.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So that's what tilt shift is. That's how it was used in this movie. It's a fun effect to play around with if you know any photographer friends who can afford a really expensive ass lens.
Paul, so I got a question for you. You have a really expensive ass lens and a camera you want to play around with?
Nope.
I know this great 8-way that's going on right now.
I can make them look like toys. Toys that fuck. All right. Anyways.
Well,
yeah.
Don't all toys fuck? That's what Toy Story was about.
Yep.
Yeah. It was about while you're away, they'll connive and scare children and possibly murder them, like gremlins or something. Yep.
Poor Sid. That's what I came away with Toy Story thinking.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Anyways, is there anything
it's
else
like
you liked about
Goosebumps movie?
Yeah, it's practically
horrifying.
Practically another version of It.
It's busted.
Who are you calling busted, Buster? That's right. I'm talking to you, Sid Phillips. We don't like being blown up, Sid. Or smashed, or ripped apart.
We?
That's right. Your From now on, you must take good care of your toys. Because if you don't, we'll find out, Sid. We toys can see everything. So play nice.
Is there anything else that you enjoyed about this movie or that worked for you?
That's about it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. Cars on the Table. I half watched this movie. I was playing a round of Civilization.
Come on.
I know, it's a David Fincher movie. I really fucked up. But
you have to pay attention to a movie like this.
That's
why I don't think you got the subtlety of the characters
totally.
that you were railing against.
I know. I totally did not really want to watch this movie, and I had to get myself to do the movie while I did something else because I just had very little desire to get into it.
Oh,
and
man.
So I was doing my turn in Civ and looking down time to time, and in between turns I was watching the movie, and if something stood out.
Oh, that's so unfair to such a brilliantly made movie.
So Cars on the Table. That's why I don't have a lot of great things to say about it aside from
Fair enough. Fair
Donald Trump and his fake news.
enough. Yeah. Gosh. All right.
Roy Moore. You know.
Yep. Fucking Roy Moore, man.
So what's
Jesus Christ.
what's in the fake news for that? What you didn't like about this movie?
The only thing I'll say is that I think, as you mentioned, and now that I know this is coming from a half watch, I'm gonna hammer this point home as hard as I fucking can.
I'm on my knees.
If you are not a good watcher of movies, I fully acknowledge I'm being condescending here. If you are not a good watcher of movies, if you don't pay close attention, if you don't listen to the dialogue, if you don't see the whole picture of what's being put on screen and what you're hearing, it is very easy for a viewer to see this as a glorification of Mark Zuckerberg and a glorification of, in many ways, complicity in what Facebook ends up becoming, what we know it to be now, 7 years after the movie was released. I think that if you're a good movie watcher, that makes this a good movie, because if you know what to look for, you can find all the right shit in this movie that makes it a subtle, well-made movie with a lot of variation in it. But if you were a tentpole movie watcher, if the only movie you saw in theaters last year was The Avengers, or Captain America: Civil War, or whatever it is, whatever the latest Marvel property is, then you can come away from this movie saying this is a glorification of Mark Zuckerberg that makes the Winklevoss twins and makes Eduardo Saverin all look like idiots. But I think upon closer viewing, if you really pay hardcore attention, this is a really subtle, well-made, well-crafted movie by experts in their field, all of whom are operating at the top of their game. So I will say, I don't think that's something I didn't like. It's something that it's something that's evident in talking to people who are stupid.
Ouch.
When you talk about this movie.
Wow.
Because you see people be like, oh, Mark Zuckerberg's so cool. Yeah, Jesse Eisenberg was so cool. It's like, no, dude, that's not the point of this movie. You shouldn't come away from this movie thinking that any of these characters are cool. You shouldn't think any of them are good people. I will fault it a little bit for kind of tricking the more gullible viewers into that sort of attitude. But like I said, that's just something that doesn't work for the movie itself. It's not something that doesn't work for me with regard to this movie. It's just something that doesn't work for the movie itself. And I think that's why this movie wasn't more popular, because, you're going to have the film school nerds go see a David Fincher movie. You're going to have the cinematography nerds go see a David Fincher movie. And you're going to have the tentpole audiences go see a movie about Facebook. But I don't think the conversations after this movie were quite as, let's say, apropos of the material as they could have been, because of the fact that you have to really you have to dig into this movie with your fingernails. Otherwise, it doesn't do what I think its potential gives it potential to do. That was a bad sentence.
No. I'm laughing at the fact that what you didn't like about it was you don't like anybody else who doesn't get the movie.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the movie is a little tough because it's
subversive.
Yeah, like take for example the fact that in a movie every line of dialogue is supposed to be significant. In Mark and Erica's conversation in the first scene, that conversation is not supposed to be real life Mark Zuckerberg. That is the narrative showing us that the character of Mark Zuckerberg is running conversational circles around this person whose approval he desperately craves. And that sets us up for the rest of the movie. You take a dumb viewer and you have them watch that scene, it's like, oh, Mark was being a dick and he said some stuff that he maybe regretted. His girlfriend got mad at him and he lashed out at her. That's what happens in the scene. That's not the scene. That's not the scene's purpose within the narrative. That's not the scene's purpose with regard to the characters. The whole movie is like that. we have the reverse pyramid writing, where each scene starts with what the scene is about and ends with what the actual point of the scene's conversation was. We have characters that slowly reveal themselves over time, some of which, maybe more on the nose than others. I think this movie's not for tentpole audiences, and it got consumed by tentpole audiences, and that's what problem I have with it or with the audience. It's a work of art that was consumed by people who want pieces of candy. I don't know. Maybe I'm sucking his dick a little bit too much. Maybe that's just my long-winded way of saying I don't really have anything wrong with this movie, much like many David Fincher movies, many Paul Thomas Anderson movies. I tend to want to forgive the things that don't work 100% because the things that I like so much. That's a bad answer. I gave a bad answer to that question.
No,
I'm just going to let it live on the internet forever.
I'm going to insert.
Because I don't care.
I'm going to insert a sound bite of Magnolia when he goes, "I have so much love to give, but I don't know where to put it."
Oh my God.
I really do have love to give. I just don't know where to put it.
Oh, you fucker. All right. What didn't work for you in this movie that you half watched?
Well, I was playing as... Oh, God, it's so long ago. Who was I playing as?
You were playing as Attila the Hun, you fuck.
No, I wasn't the Huns. But I was against him.
Oh, gosh.
God,
breaks my heart that you didn't pay attention to this movie, man. Breaks my fucking heart.
It was exactly what I thought it would be. It was just like a propagandic biopic of Mark Zuckerberg. It didn't surprise me in any meaningful way, insofar as the characters evolved or were more than just like their one-dimensional character needed to be in kind of like an overdone type of movie, which is like the bio thing. No one really subverted anything. You have Justin Timberlake.
How much of the context did you have before you watched the movie? How much of the story did you know?
I just know that he made Facebook and that he was going to get sued.
Oh, okay.
That's all.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have a lot of context.
I had nothing.
Of you just had your preconceived notions.
Yeah.
And then
I think I assumed he was going to get sued. Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
The Huns are fucking ruthless.
They are.
And history has shown time and time again, you can't. The Huns are the exceptions.
You can't take them lightly because so many of us have,
Absolutely not. And when you focus on culture or, expanding your boundaries, then you're just leaving yourself open for a Hun run by, and it's just not a good time. But you have the classic Faustian character that is, well, he's the devil, Justin Timberlake, and Faust is Mark Zuckerberg.
The tempter.
Yeah. He tells him everything he wants to hear, gives him all the praise he desires and needs from this character, who's kind of portrayed as a user and a phony and a bit of a... He's a character past his prime in a way of like a Dorian Gray, where the old guy is teaching Dorian to be a bad guy. Thank you, Miss Casey, Dorian Gray. This is a character who's a bad guy who has seen all the ropes, all the pitfalls, and kind of like steers him. He's not necessarily steering him away from the pitfalls, but he's showing him how he could have done much better in that situation when he was like, on top of it all. And so he's kind of doing like a Dorian Gray thing where the old guy's teaching him how to fuck women. And
he's teaching him to succumb to his worst instincts, essentially.
Yeah, and so when I said that, like, all the blame and like all the shortcomings or the badness of other characters makes Mark Zuckerberg, like, he's an anti-hero, but he's like way more of like a hero than an anti-hero in this movie.
Sure.
Because especially paired against Justin Timberlake, he is the ultimate evil. Although he does do a lot of good for Facebook and getting him the money. No. Justin Timberlake is the ultimate evil. He's the one
you said
who's
something
opening all the
paired
doors.
with Justin Timberlake is the ultimate evil.
Oh, is that what I said?
Yeah. I was just trying to clarify what you said.
Oh, okay. I meant like compared to rather compared to Justin Timberlake. Justin Timberlake's Ultimate Evil. So you say, aha, that's the bad guy versus
Well, that's what Eduardo says. Eduardo
even Eduardo places the blame on him. Everyone is totally like, Mark Zuckerberg was a victim of circumstance. He was beguiled by a fast-talking snake oil salesman. There you go, oilsman. That's not bad, but you know what I mean. So I've seen this before, and like I said, it was like very propagandic to say, Mark Zuckerberg's not that bad a guy, and they have like even the Winklevosses, the Winklemen, who are just big dumb bullies.
Yeah.
Who are daddy's rich, so-and-sos or other. And they're ultimately made not to be like super sympathetic either because they're just big dumb jocks. They're not even dumb. They're just like big rich jocks.
Yeah.
And
they're smart jocks. They have 3.8 GPAs.
Yeah. So you kind of like, you're rooting against everybody else. The cards are stacked. It's like if the Seahawks are playing like the Raiders and then like the Patriots and then like, I don't know, Satan. It's like, who are you going to root for? Fucking Seahawks, right? So, give me a fucking break over here. It was no contest. Eduardo is made the most sympathetic, but he seems like he's a victim of his own stupidity, rather than being like they don't really make him a bad guy. They don't give him a lot of worth aside from like the first line of code.
You don't think they give him enough bad qualities? Or you don't think they show his sociopathy and his vindictiveness enough? Oh, sorry.
Eduardo?
I'm
talking about Eduardo.
Where you were going. I apologize. Go for it.
I'm talking about Eduardo.
I thought you were talking about Mark for some stupid reason. I missed something in that last sentence.
No. I might not have been clear, but Eduardo's like also not like a champion of justice because he's made to be a rube and
also he's a pushover
kind of
because he wants to be liked by Mark.
And he's trying, like, he's not Faustian enough, or he's not the devil enough like Justin Timberlake was to like see the big picture. So he has that big fault, right? For not being able to grow the company as fast as Justin Timberlake was able to take it. And not really given the credit necessarily, not even necessarily credit, but the movie moves so fast between when he helps them get off the ground with like his $10,000 that he puts up for the company and buying all the equipment and getting the people and all this stuff. Yeah. Like he just made it look like kind of like the Watchmen, that Manhattan's first girlfriend. I stood by you. I gave you everything. Kind of like that, but still at the same time being like, yeah, but from Dr. Manhattan's perspective, he was kind of like, she was just some girl. I'm God. Well,
yeah, and he even as a god, he had those very, human thoughts of like, I remember specifically him saying the line, it's true, she is aging more noticeably every day. And it's like, that's a very human thing to feel, whereas like, it's the same thing with Eduardo. It's very human for him to feel, betrayed by the idea of, I'm the only one that put any actual money into this. You guys put the labor in, but I put money in and now I need to profit. And because you don't want to advertise, you're not letting me profit.
And also like, you're going to let Justin Timberlake, the Napster, the thief himself, the guy who invented the way to steal from the music industry. Yes, and at that time in society,
Justin Timberlake's character was seen as a thief. Like Metallica famously was one of the people that sued Napster to try and get millions of dollars that Sean Parker just didn't have because they claimed they lost all these royalties. Whereas over time, it's been proven piracy doesn't impact the, bottom line sales of something as much as we think it does.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm definitely a proponent of that idea and of, sorry, Warner Brothers and all you fuckers out there, that sometimes it is good to have a free movie or free TV or like, sometimes it's good for the bottom line because I'll support it in other ways or support the creators or whatever. Maybe not the studio, which is ultimately the bottom line, but maybe I'll buy the box set. Maybe, when I have the money to put up. I do this. I was broke, very broke. I pirated a couple games, sure, but you know what? The ones that I really liked, I bought them when I had money, when I started working. I will be the first to admit, like so many others, I pirated Skyrim. But I enjoyed it so much that when it was on sale on Steam for like $20, which is still a lot for a very old game, I said, you know what? You deserve this, and I want to pay you back for the joy I got out of your product. Here's $20, man. Thanks. And so I've definitely done that. And that's a game I never would have played had I not had the resources to get that for free and then love it and be like, hey, man, this is a great game. I'm really glad I spent a lot of time with this.
And there's there's other ethical angles to that same exact issue, which are like, for example, right now we're in the midst of the gaming company EA being hated by its target demographic for causing them to incur massive amounts of microtransactions in a console or PC game that ordinarily...
A full-price game.
Yeah, a full-price game. And so there are, some gaming ethicists would say something to the effect of, well, in that case, pirate their game, play it online, make them pay for the servers that you're playing on, and never pay for a single DLC, because fuck them for doing something so kind of insidious to their consumers.
Well, that's half the argument, and that's also kind of half the, I guess a fraction of the point, because technically speaking, it's really, really, really difficult to pirate an online game like that, like Battlefront.
Yes.
Is what we're talking about, because you need to have the registration code.
Yeah, you have to have the keys, and you have to have a new IP address, blah, blah, blah.
The most shady in terms of this game thing that you're talking about, where you can pirate or get a fell off the truck kind of price for a digital copy of a game, is where they have arbitrage, where it's sold in Russia for $9, but it's sold in the US for $40. So you know what you do? You go on, I forget the site, this quote unquote shady site, and you could buy it at where people sell it at an auction. So they'll buy it at 9, sell it at 10. You can still buy it at 10, save yourself $30 for the same game that normally would have cost you whatever, because the keys are universal. It's just the price points are sourced to different areas differently. And so you know what, fuck you. That used to be an issue. It still is an issue. But the biggest issue with EA is just that they're so unapologetic about their willingness and actual aggressive stance in trying to take advantage of people. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They're just totally chipping away at their goodwill and really just pissing off everyone in the community. And there are other companies doing this too. Activision is right now in the midst of being shitheads about things. But this is not a new phenomenon. It's just that EA is pushing it so far that we're getting legislators and lawmakers involved.
Well, and I
this
think
is ridiculous.
Zuckerberg is under fire for Facebook having traits of pay to play and easily addictable, type of content on there as well. Certain types of pages, if you want more people than just your fans to see what you're putting out there, you have to essentially do what an advertiser does, which is pay for time, pay for airtime. Or they have those weird games where you pay for coins and then you put the coins in your little guy and then your guy,
Yeah, you pay to not play. So
or
you
bringing
pay
it back
to
to Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg had the wherewithal in this movie, Mark Zuckerberg had the wherewithal to at least tell Eduardo that the reason we're not profiting is because if we profit, we're not cool anymore. And I think that's a valid point at some level. But now that they are profiting, they're still cool, and they're so profitable that it's just, they have the ability to act with impunity.
This scene where they start profiting and the whole share gets diluted of Eduardo.
Yeah.
All the focus is shifted away from Mark Zuckerberg because Justin Timberlake goes up to him and is this is an in-your-face kind of moment.
Yes.
And all the blame is shifted away from Mark Zuckerberg because Justin Timberlake is magnified as a much worse person.
We suddenly realize he's the devil.
Well, you already kind of had that feeling, right? And then all the other shit happens. Blah, blah,
that's
blah,
like
blah.
the nail in the coffin. That's like, oh, this is definitely the devil.
Yeah. So this makes Mark Zuckerberg so much more sympathetic in the relative actions or relative whatever he's doing or feels or whatever.
Yeah,
compared
in the grand
to all these
scheme
other
of things, he's a small cookie. Yeah.
Yeah, compared to all these other like very heightened characters around him.
Yeah.
And so that's why I feel like it's very unfair and highly propagandic, because there is no, you blame him only to an extent when there's so many other people around him that you instantly point the finger to because you can and because the movie's making you do it. So I feel like that's highly subversive, and I already knew that was going to happen, but like I said, I went in looking for it and I found it, but I don't think I'm wrong either, because I can give you all these other examples as to this is exactly what I'm talking about. So
Sure.
I was not a fan of that. And it wasn't in like Mark Zuckerberg's a villain and he needs the good press, and I'm curious to see what they can do with it way, like they did with Nixon in with Sir Anthony Hopkins playing Nixon. I thought that was great, right? They made this ultimate villain of the US, this president, into like one of the most sympathetic characters of all time, like in the way that it was written and Anthony Hopkins portrays him. I mean, also if you believe
I've never
the writings
actually
of,
seen that movie, so I'm gonna have to check that out.
Oh, it's great. I would love to review that movie. Oh man, it's so good. It's also like a 3-hour movie, but it's totally great. It's like an excellent Anthony Hopkins movie. Not to mention it has my boy Henry Kissinger in there, or like a caricature of him, which I just love.
Oh god,
my boy H Kiss, his rap name.
H Kiss.
One of the smartest statesmen the U.S. has ever seen, but also one of the arguably the most war criminally and
one of
morally
the worst
questionable
people of all time.
One of the most morally questionable, is true.
Yeah. Oh my fucking gosh. Jeez.
Yeah. I love his place in history. He's such a fascinating character of history.
Yeah. Just so you know, we're coming up on an hour 52.
I know.
So let's wrap up what you didn't like about this movie and then get to our recommendations here.
We got very tangential in this.
I'm going to say that one podcast out of fucking, how many have we done? 25, 30? It's okay we do a little tangent every
Rest
now and
in peace. A couple that we lost along the way.
Yep.
But yeah, that was the most egregious thing that I didn't like. I thought the girlfriend of Eduardo was stupid. The whole, oh my god, we have groupies and bitches, but they're also crazy opportunists. That was
an unnecessary B plot.
Yeah, it was a little hammy. It could have been done a little bit more subtly, maybe.
It was used to heighten situations in which Eduardo was already in distress.
Yeah.
It was used to heighten his conflict with Sean Parker because she and Mark liked Sean and Eduardo didn't. And it was also used to heighten Eduardo's conflict with Mark when Eduardo froze the accounts. That's all she was used for. She was a narrative device.
Yeah, basically.
She didn't have any depth to her.
Nope. I didn't like... Well, the other programmers weren't really given any time either. But it was definitely mentioned a few times, like, they're getting moved to California, they're getting shares in the company, and all this other shit.
Yeah.
The little epilogue of, like, the Winklevosses ended up settling out of court for, like, an undisclosed amount, and it went to row in the Beijing Olympics. And I was like, oh, those dicks. Eduardo settled for $65 million. And it made it sound like everything was okay. They didn't really talk about Justin. Yeah, they didn't really talk about Justin Timberlake. I don't know if they did. I can't remember at the end of his scene, if there's a denouement for him. And then, like, the whole time while this is going on, you just see, like, Mark Zuckerberg trying to refresh the page to see if, like, his ex-girlfriend has, like, friended him, making him even more sympathetic, like, he did it for love, or, oh, he still misses her. Man, fuck this. Not entirely. I don't really mean that.
Well, they have that whole conversation about it, where Sean tries to tell him to let go of the girl that he was doing it for, and at the end, Mark obviously didn't learn that lesson. Like, that was the one good lesson Sean tried to teach him, and Mark obviously didn't learn it.
It makes him even more sympathetic as, like, he is the good guy. He is the youngest billionaire of all time, as he's sitting there, like, it's like, oh, but he's still unhappy. He has billions of dollars, but he's still unhappy. Oh, that's so sad for him. And, like, I was like, man, this is a propaganda piece. So, I don't know. Like, again, I'm biased. I need to watch this again. while not playing Civ. But to be honest, I knew how it was going to go. I still know how it's going to go. And I still feel the same way of I don't really want to watch this movie.
If you don't want to watch it again, don't watch it again. Because I don't think you will be swayed by my sucking of this movie's dick. I think that you're not giving fair time to some of the things that I maybe saw that you didn't because you weren't paying attention. But I don't think a second watching is going to fix what you didn't like.
Yeah.
I think it's fine that it didn't work for you. It's just I would have liked, for example, I can think of a lot of movies we could review that I would go into hating before I even start them. But also, I can see myself putting all of my electronics away, watching them, and then watching them again with a notepad and trying to.
You just got to get Civ, man.
Not happening. Not happening.
You got to get it on GOG for $5, even though it only costs $20.
Not happening. I'm not getting Civ until my, we'll talk about that later. I'm not getting Civ. At any rate, would you recommend this movie to your fellow movie watchers?
No, I'd say it's exactly what you think it's going to be. You don't really gain anything from it. It's a total, you can miss it. I don't know, man. What about you? Would you recommend
I
The
have
Social
and
Network?
will continue to recommended this movie.
Yeah, I just thought it was so boring.
Oh, man.
The whole premise. I was like, I know what I'm going to see.
I resent your lack of openness because I feel like I would extend openness to any movie you recommended me. But having gotten past that, I have recommended this movie. I will continue to. It is disappointing when I recommend it to someone and they're that stupid viewer who no, I really mean this. It is disappointing when I recommend it to someone and they're that stupid viewer who takes the movie and romanticizes Mark Zuckerberg's character and without thinking about them at all hates Eduardo and hates the Winklevi. I hate that. That is a big bummer. But to the people who I think really pay attention when I've recommended this movie, they've all had very good things to say about it, and I think that will continue to be the case. I will always recommend Paul Thomas Anderson movies, and I will always recommend David Fincher movies, regardless of my opinion of the movies themselves, simply as an exercise in viewing a movie, because they're two of our generation's greatest.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. I don't know much about Paul
I had to
Thomas
soapbox
Anderson,
to
though.
give you a little bit of shit for not watching because I didn't feel I had given you adequate shit.
I really do have love to give. I just don't know where to put it.
But at any rate,
You know what I'm going to insert into just after that last part, right?
I have so much love to give.
Yes!
Just do it the second time. All right. Well, with that, this has been our 2-hour-long Anson and Paul's Big Movie Podcast.
I know.
My name is Paul Morgan.
Paul Thomas Anderson Morgan. And I'm
Paul Morgan Freeman.
I'm David Anson Fincher Chan. We'll see you all next time.
Next time.